faith without good deeds is dead. So it basically just says, like, if you say you have faith but don't show it by your actions, can that kind of faith save anyone? You know, just talking about, like, you could believe all you want, but you got to put the work in. So that applies to basketball too. It applies to anything in life, but you could say something, but you just got to put the work behind it too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look at me.
Benchmark. They're speaking the facts that you wanna hear. They reppin' Jersey, the vision is clear. Diamonds glisten like a chandelier. You know what I'm here for, like Marshawn Lynch. At clutch time, we do not flinch. Real brothers, we do not switch. Hit home runs with the right pitch. Who run the city? What to do when they hating on you? I feel like Kobe 2010. Taking an L, all I need is a win. Business is business, you know how they go. You playing the seats, now it's on the grow. Tuning now, gotta be in the know. Showtime, bitch, my butter blow.
I ain't seen from now. Bowser was really, I did not tell you.
Benchmark Podcast. What's up, bro?
Yeah, welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of Bench Mob ENT. Today we got a special guest. We got Coach Adams in the building today. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Just living the dream, I would say.
Hey, that's a great place to be at. Before we start, you already know the house rules. Like, share, subscribe, share it with a friend. Make sure that you check it out. It's on YouTube and all streaming platforms. Where did your love for sports in general start? Because, you got track, basketball, you're coaching now. Where did that love for sports start for you?
That's a good question. It definitely started with basketball. Like, that was my first sport where I was like, okay, like, this is something I want to take serious or like really dive into it. More so, I'd say from like a research perspective. Like, I was really big on like knowing who all the NBA players were, what their stats were. I was looking up like draft picks and things like that. So I think it started from an early age in basketball. Like, I played Mountaintop League and was into that, all that type of stuff. The other sports were kind of just like other things to do, but it was really basketball. I knew it was like my main love and everything.
So then how did you get into track then? Because we'll get into that later, but obviously elite track athlete.
Appreciate that. Barely elite.
South Carolina, but how did you end up getting into track then?
Yeah, so it was funny. I knew I wanted to do like other sports besides basketball. I thought I was going to be an NBA guy. Like, everybody thinks they're going to make the NBA. So I was like, okay, maybe I could do track just to like stay in shape and do that. Like, I had never done track before, started my freshman year, and got into like long jumping, things like that. That was when Coach Illy was coaching track. He had no idea what he was doing, but he would try to help me. And I had a good sophomore year where I think I was like third in our conference or something like that. And I was like, okay, maybe this could be something I could keep doing. And then junior year was really what kind of hit it off. Junior year, I made the state meet and then qualified for nationals. We had a new coach who was Coach Blake, and she was like, oh, you could really do this track thing. And then at the same time, it was my junior year, basketball wasn't really working out. That was when Dwayne hit his growth spurt and started dunking on everybody. So I was like, I can make an executive decision here. I'm like, I could either try to play or I could try to beat out Dwayne. And I was like, Dwayne's pretty good. I think I'm gonna stick with this track thing. So that was kind of really how it happened.
Oh man, I remember those days, man. For you though, right? So what makes a good jumper? Long jump, like what makes somebody actually good at that?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's like you see dudes that have like jumping ability, like, guys that could dunk and things like that. But I think long jump and triple jump is different to where like you got to have a disciplined approach. You got to have the steps right. You got to have almost like a routine where like you can do the same thing over and over again, because it's not like you could just jump from anywhere. So you got to be able to hit that board. Like that was probably the hardest thing. And what I learned when I went to college was like just being able to train your body to like run the same way every time and like always hit the board and all that type of stuff. Because it's a bunch of guys that can jump far or, jump high. It's just like that routine of like doing it within the rules is the hard part, I would say.
I would definitely have to agree that meticulous, just keeping it the
Mhm.
same thing, which in basketball is different. You could switch it up here and there.
Right, right.
After you get the footwork down, you get fancy with it. With that, you
Mhm.
gotta be straight with it.
Yeah.
You right. So you ended up going to South Carolina. Why South Carolina University? And for you, what was your recruiting process like?
Yeah, it's a funny thing because I recruit guys now all the time, and I tell them my recruitment was nowhere near what the guys go through now. So I was looking at a bunch of schools, especially down south, looking all over. I looked at like Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, Ohio State. I looked at Hampton, trying to think Rider maybe in state. I picked South Carolina because it felt most like home. Like I liked the weather, the people were really friendly. um, I think maybe in particular, like I felt like the vibe was a little bit more black, like the workers were black, like it seemed like it was more homely, like, somebody that looks maybe like your aunt or grandma or something is making the food in the dining hall. So like I felt like that was the best vibe. Obviously, they gave me a good, package scholarship wise and things like that too. But it came down to South Carolina and Ohio State. So most people don't know this, I originally committed to Ohio State.
Mm.
Like this was back when everybody was on Facebook. I put it on Facebook, but then it was like a week or so later, the South Carolina coaches called my mom and they were like, why is he going to Ohio State? Like, what's going on? And then my mom was like, well, it was because of this and that. What I thought was I had heard from somebody that like I had to jump a certain amount to make the South Carolina team. And they were like, nah, that's not true. He can like, hop on and just like prove himself and make the team. So once I heard that, I was like, okay, I'm thinking about it. And then I switched back to South Carolina. And then Ohio State came back again after I had said I'm going to South Carolina. They're like, okay, like what's it going to take for him to go to Ohio State? Because at that time it was, track is like partial scholarships. They're like, what if we offer him a full scholarship? And I was like, So my mom called me. It was like a random like Friday. She was like, well, Ohio State just upped the offer. But at that point, I was like, I was kind of over the process at that point. So I just stuck with South Carolina. But I think that was a good decision overall.
I think we can say, looking back on it, it definitely was a good decision.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially to the point that you mentioned it feeling like home and you seeing people looking like you. Respectfully, that wasn't going to be probably a lot of that at Ohio State.
Right. It was, the crazy thing was when I went on my official visit, it snowed and it was like April. And I was like, I don't know if I could do it. And they had to track me outside in the snow. And I was like, I don't know if I could do this.
Nah, that's something different. That's really different.
Yeah.
Now you're into coaching, right? So what went into that thought process to actually coach, and why basketball and not track?
Yeah, well, track, kind of like I said, was always more like a thing to do on the side and things like that. My passion was really basketball. I knew even if I ended up playing basketball in college or whatever I did in college, I wanted to be in basketball for a career. Like I thought about being maybe an agent, maybe being like a GM of a team or something like that, just kind of working in basketball in some way. I settled on coaching because I did a couple internships. Like I worked with Princeton basketball for a little bit. I worked with this random like baseball team in Atlanta, like this travel team. And I don't know anything about baseball, but just like being able to like coach those guys and kind of mentor them, that was like what got me into coaching, just seeing how you can like, affect young people's lives through coaching and mentorship and all that. So I just pretty much like dived into it and, it kind of stuck. So.
Yeah, I was doing the research. Your resume is long. You put in the hours, you put in the work.
It's getting long now. Yeah, I know.
It kind of reminded me of like Eric Spoelstra, like how he started like in the video room and got all the way up to head coach. So I think that was really dope, your journey going into becoming a head coach. It wasn't like these people that offer the name or the connection and just got a head coaching job with no experience. So
right.
For you, right, from the high school aspect, the collegiate aspect, and now in coaching, one would say, looking at your life, that it has been successful. You've been winning on each level. How would you say that your faith has helped you in this journey through your life from high school, college, now to being a coach, and then, like you said, affecting the next generation of athletes?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say it's definitely helped because, sports is hard. As anybody who's ever tried to be an athlete or tried to win at something, like it's hard. You don't always win. I've had seasons where I've coached where we've won like 1 or 2 games in the whole year. I've had obviously with me playing basketball, I was like in and out of the lineup, not necessarily playing as much, but what kind of keeps you going is like that faith and just kind of knowing, you have something else to kind of go to and something else to believe in. Especially at, now I'm at St. Elizabeth University, which is like a Catholic school. So you're kind of able to express your faith a little bit more. Like we just started a chapter of FCA, which is like Fellowship of Christian Athletes. So we have a couple of my guys go. We have some, basketball players, soccer players, baseball players that'll go to that. So it being a Catholic institution, you can kind of express whatever faith you kind of have, and it's not really any repercussions. But I would say, yeah, it's a big part of what keeps me going because, coaching is a up and down thing. Every day is something, you're really just like, you're relying on a lot of young people, and we know young people make mistakes every day. So you just got to have, faith and be grounded and just know that, you're doing it for a higher purpose. It's not just, wins and losses, but you're doing it for a higher purpose.
That's definitely something to keep in mind, the higher purpose. And sure, you already know, like the scripture that says you should do everything unto God. So even coaching, playing, you're doing it as unto God with a spirit of excellence. So I think that's dope. And I think that's something that for believers, you always have to keep in mind. Like you said, in the hardest times, 1-win, 2-win season, what keeps you going? What keeps you coming back? So 100%, that's important. Now that you're a coach and you mentioned, the recruitment process for you and what it is now for players and how different it is, what are your thoughts on the transfer portal? Like, how do you feel about this, especially being a coach? Because literally you could get in a guy tomorrow and can play immediately, no waiting time. So what's your thoughts and feelings on the transfer portal?
Yeah, so I have a couple thoughts. I was just talking to somebody about this yesterday. I have a couple thoughts about it. Like when I was in college, it used to be more traditional. Like if you transferred, that means you really wanted to transfer. Like you were willing to go to a school, sit out a year, and then play. So like you really wanted to do it at that point. But now I feel like it's gotten to the point where I think we've given the players some freedom, but I think there's a little too much freedom. Like I understand if a coach gets fired or, you're missing home or whatever, that grandma got sick or something like that. Like those are good reasons, I think, to transfer. But I think now it's become like, okay, I'm not playing and it's hard. So now I want to transfer to another school because the coach said I could play here. Or it's like, I think the worst thing now is that we have like actual like college basketball stars transferring. Like guys that like play 30 minutes, NBA prospects are just like, okay, I went to this school for a couple years. I want to go to another school, maybe because the bag is different or something like that, So I think in that aspect, it hurts because teams can't really build programs anymore. It's really just like a year-to-year thing. You might get somebody 1 year and, you can't really expect to keep them, especially the lower D1s. Like anybody that has a good year at low D1, they're going in the transfer portal because somebody's, poaching them. But from the other side, I think it's good that it holds coaches accountable now too. You can't really just treat anybody however you treat them, because it used to be, once you sign with a school, you're not really leaving. So the coach could, bench you or yell at you, whatever it is. So now I think you have to be more careful as a coach to like really deliver on what you promised them in recruiting. So you can't just lie to kids, or you can't just say, oh, you're going to be the star and then switch it up. So I think that's why, because we haven't, in my 2 years, we haven't had really anybody go in the portal. We have one senior in the portal now, but we haven't had a mass exodus of kids. And I think that's part of why, like, we tell kids, honestly, like, it's going to be a competition. It's not going to be, oh, you're the guy coming in. It's going to be, hey, you got to practice. You got to beat out the guy next to you. If you do, you'll play. If not, then you got to keep working. So, but yeah, overall, I think they need to put some more restrictions on it, but I think it's overall a good thing for the student athletes.
I was about to say, definitely it need to be some type of parameters on it. Like a committee, maybe even all right, so you want to transfer, and maybe they got to go before the committee and explain
Mhm.
why you want to transfer, not just, you know what, I heard I can play more at St. John's, so I'm leaving at St. John's, or
Mhm.
you know what, the NIL is different over in Florida. I'm gonna go to Florida because there's more money there. So
Yeah.
I completely agree on that regard, and to the point of coaches being held accountable too. When you look at college, coaches are dag near like gods on the university. They can do
Mhm.
anything, whatever they want, and they were able to get away with it. Now it's a little bit harder to do so. As a coach too, in this collegiate space, you see it sometimes on the high school level too. What are
Mhm.
your thoughts on NIL?
Yeah, so it's funny, when I was in college at South Carolina, I was a sport management major. So I did my thesis, my senior thesis, on the possibility. It wasn't called NIL then, but it was just like, about really it was like the Ed O'Bannon case with NCAA football, and how they had all the players, you could like download the roster with all the players' names, but nobody was getting any money for it. So I kind of talked in my thesis about like the possibility and if it was good or bad. I think my thought then was that it was going to be bad. But I think overall, I think it's a good thing for athletes, but it's not a good thing from an overall, college sports landscape type of thing. Because you see, athletes are making decisions, like we said, based on who can give the most NIL money, or, if somebody comes in and they're making, I don't know, let's say 100,000 NIL money, and then the next recruit next year comes in and makes 200,000, that kid might go into the coach's office and say, "What the heck? I want some more money." So it's like, are we really keeping it college, or has it become like where it's almost like a pro thing, and it's like you got to outbid people, almost like the NBA. The NBA is like, people are going to go where the most money is, and that's kind of what college is turning into. So from that perspective, I don't really like it as much. But I do think athletes should be able to make money. I just think at the high levels, they're going to make sure they make like ridiculous amounts of money. So I think it can get out of hand. And the thing that I think is coming down the pipeline, which might slow it down, is, we don't really think about it, but when you're making all that money, those taxes are probably going to come at some point. It hasn't yet, but I think at some point the government's going to say, look at these kids making 100,000, 200,000, they want their cut too, the government. So I think that might slow things down a little bit, but we'll see what happens, in that regard.
That's an interesting point too. I don't think people think about the governmental aspect. They definitely don't want they cut.
Mm-hmm.
To your point, like it's only, I think the number was 18 or 19 athletes that are making actually six figures. And
Mm-hmm.
just breaking it down, some of those top athletes aren't even the best on their team. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying no names, but it's a
Right.
couple people couple athletes you look and it's like the best person on the team is making way, way, way less.
Mm-hmm.
Person has a social media following,
Right.
getting more money. So I think it's imbalance, period. And it's gonna cause an issue at some point. Like you said, somebody's gonna take a stand like this isn't right. I'm averaging 25 and
Mm-hmm.
person that has 2 million followers is getting more that's riding the bench. Nah, it's
Mm-hmm.
gonna cause an issue. One piece of advice to any athlete that is trying to play at the collegiate level, whether it's the D1, D2, D3 level, any piece of advice for them?
Yeah, I would say I probably have a couple. I'm gonna do the cliche, you got to have your grades right thing, but from a different perspective, is we see so many kids that are talented, personable, they probably would fit in the college system, but then we go to the transcript and it's like, dang, you weren't doing any work in high school, so like I think it's a thing where like you got to have your grades right, especially that's whether you're going D1, D2, or D3. Just having your grades in some kind of order. No one has to be a 4.0 student, but like, you got to have your grades right, or a college is just going to scratch you off the list. Most colleges, that's how they scratch you off the list, is checking your grades. So that's the first thing. I would say second, you got to do your own kind of advocating now with it, craziness of the transfer portal, and there's transfer portal, there's JUCO, there's prep kids, there's high school kids, there's international now. There's so many kids that can possibly go to a college. Like, you can't just sit back and hope that somebody comes to your high school game or hope that your coach reaches out. Like, you got to do it on your own, more than anything now, because coaches, like, we want to get that information, but we sometimes don't know about kids. We're only, my staff is only me and 2 other coaches. So we can't know every kid in New Jersey or every kid across the country. But it helps if you kind of reach out. And then the last thing I would say is knowing what you actually want in that college and recruiting experience. Because I do, 100, 200 phone calls in a year to different kids, and I ask them what they want, and most of them are like, oh, well, I don't know, but that doesn't really help the process of, like, actually picking a school that fits you. Because my biggest thing is, there's a bunch of guys that are good at basketball, but, like, if you don't fit St. Elizabeth and what it is, like, we're not a party school, we're a smaller school, we're mostly minority. Our guys are, they mostly hoop. That's what they do. They hoop, they eat, they play video games. That's about it. So, if you're looking for something else, it's probably not going to fit. But if you don't know what you want, then it's hard for a college to kind of say, okay, he might be a good fit or he might be a bad fit. I think when you cast your net too wide in recruiting, that's how you end up not really finding a school that's for you. Like, it's okay to say, I don't want a small school, or it's okay to say, I want to be close to home, or I want to be far from home, or say, hey, I want a team where I'm going to start right away, or I want a team where they're winning and I can, develop. So I think just those 3 things: the grades, advocating for yourself, and then when a college actually calls you, knowing, being able to say, like, hey, this is actually what I want out of this experience.
Hey, for those watching, those listening, bunch of gems of wisdom right there. Speaking of St. Elizabeth, what would you say is your calling card, your brand of basketball as a coach?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I was never an offensive guy. So I was more a defender, like, kind of like, I played center at 6'2", which was terrible, but that's another story. But I was like the guy in the back, like, calling out everything. I kind of helped, all the other players that we had be their best, because I was able to call out what a screen was, or what the action was. I might have seen that play before, and I was, like, very cerebral in that way. So I'd say St. Elizabeth basketball has really been a defensive team. The past 2 seasons, we were, I think, 2nd in the league this year, and then the year before we might have been 1st or 2nd in overall defense. So that's kind of been our calling card of, like, pressure defense. We've had guys that block shots and take charges, and then we kind of turn the defense into offense. We have a lot of athletes on the team, so our defense is kind of what sparks our offense. We're able to get in transition, and we have a great crowd. They're always hype and things like that. So I'd say that's been kind of our style of play, really pressuring, and then getting out in the open court. On offense, we kind of play kind of like an even type of offense, where we're going 5 out, 4 out. We have a lot of guys that can get to the hoop and drive, and we just, like, really try to just exploit mismatches more than anything. But our main thing is playing up and down in transition, because we are, like, a really athletic, fast team and everything.
We had Nazir on, and he said before he got there, he wasn't really focused on D, but once he was with you, he's been focused on defense for sure.
Yeah, I'm not a huge yeller, as a coach, but that's what I yell about is if you're not playing defense, or if you're not playing hard, not rebounding, that's what we yell at the guys at. We tell them, like, the offensive stuff, it is what it is. On offense, you're either gonna make a shot or not, but on defense, that's what we can control. So
that's what he said too. He was like, it's different. I've never had a coach that's not really, like, yelling all the time. He was like, Coach James is kind of laid back. I was like, yeah, he's been like that since I've known him. Pretty laid back.
Yeah, for sure.
Collective. So I like that. I personally like that style of coaching. That's just me. I like that. Phil Jackson, Tyronn Lue. Like, when I need to, I'll yeah. But besides that, I'm chilling. I've already coached y'all up.
Right.
Which I got to do. 4th quarter, end off the show. What's your favorite meal?
My favorite meal. I would have to say chicken parm. Yeah, definitely chicken parm with some pasta like underneath or something like that. That's a good meal. You could eat that like for dinner and then probably eat that the next day for lunch.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
What's your favorite scripture?
My favorite scripture. Ooh, that's a good one. It's definitely out of James because that's my name. I'm trying to think what it's called. Dang, can I look it up real quick?
Of course, yeah.
Let me look it up real quick. It's definitely out of James because James has some gems in it. I would say, let me look at it. James. Yeah, let's see what it is. Oh, it's over here. It's definitely James 2, like 14 down, basically like faith without good deeds is dead. So it basically just says like, if you say you have faith, but don't show it by your actions, can that kind of faith save anyone? You know, just talking about like, you could believe all you want, but you got to put the work in. So that applies to basketball too. It applies to anything in life, but you could say something, but you just got to put the work behind it too.
Hey, for those that don't know, I know you know. It's everything in the Bible you can relate and transfer to everyday life. So that's definitely a great scripture, a great chapter. The whole book of James from 1 to 5. That just read the Bible, y'all. For those watching, listen, just read the Bible.
Read the Bible.
There's a lot of good stuff in there. 5 coaches that you would like to have as a mentor. NBA coach, college coach, dead or alive. 5 coaches that come to mind that you would like to have as a mentor.
I would say Phil Jackson, like you had kind of mentioned earlier. Phil Jackson, I think he was a really good, really just manager of people, like different stars. Like he had Jordan and Kobe. I would say John Calipari for the recruiting side, because I still think it's amazing some of the teams he put together, just like with all freshmen and being able to manage whatever the craziness of that was. I'll say John Wooden because he had all them titles. It was crazy winning all those titles in a row. I got 2 more. I'll say Doc Rivers because I think he draws up some good plays. And then last guy, well, let's say last guy, I'm gonna go with Mike Brown. Mike Brown. I saw one of his mic'd up sessions and he seems like he's a pretty cool coach, like kind of understands it. Like I think he's been at a bunch of stops, but like kind of understands how to manage players and pros and stuff like that. Like he's not yelling all the time, but he, gets his work done.
Yeah, Mike Brown, cool coach. That's my coach of the year this year. I think that's a good 5 right there. Favorite thing to do that has nothing to do with sports?
Nothing to do with sports. That's interesting. I would say it has nothing to do with sports because I'm so competitive. Like everything I do is something competitive. That has nothing to do with sports. I would say watching. I watch The Office in my spare time. That's one of my favorite shows all time. The comedy I think is, I don't know, it's like generational comedy.
Office, one of the best shows ever created, hands down. You can watch it at any point.
Yeah.
Just had a couple months ago, I just had my wife go through the whole all seasons.
Okay.
She loved it. So yeah, that's definitely. Who's your NBA champion this year?
Ooh, my NBA champion. I'm gonna say, it's funny, as I am a college coach, I don't follow NBA as much, but I know obviously who's in the running and things like that. I'm gonna go with the dark horse. I'm gonna say Denver. I think no one's picking Denver, but I think they're a really good team when they're clicking.
Denver, hopefully for Jokic's sake.
I know, yeah. If they don't win this year, it might be a different team next year.
For sure. Last one before we get you out of here. And again, we thank you for hopping on with us. You were around some of the best talent in multiple sports in West Orange high school history. Give me, in your opinion, the best 3 athletes, any sport from West Orange High School.
That's a great question. You should have asked me that before so I could have thought about it. But let's see, because I've seen a lot. Even my freshman year, there were some good athletes. I'm gonna go with, I won't say myself, I won't do that. I'm gonna say Quadir Tudor was one of the best, jumped like 6'10" in high jump. I'm gonna say for basketball, I'm gonna go with, for basketball, I'll go with Dwayne for basketball. Just for the fact that he was able to make pro out of West Orange, I think is, crazy. They should have something up in the gym, they should have his picture up in the gym or something like that.
Something.
Yeah. And then lastly, I'm gonna say best athletes. I'm gonna go with my boy Gerald.
Gerald, I tell people all the time, Gerald, even to this day,
Yeah, Gerald's still athletic.
Play basketball with him here and there. When we practiced with him, he's just like the closest thing that I've seen personally to like a freak.
He could do any sport. Yeah.
In any sport, and to this day, fast, strong, can jump. And it looks so effortless with Gerald. It looks so effortless. Oh man, that one day somebody needs to do a documentary.
I know.
West Orange. There's been a lot of talent that's come out of West Orange.
I know. I tell people it's like you wouldn't think, but it's just like every year, especially those couple years that I was in high school, we had some really big time athletes.
Big time. Like, it's underrated the amount of talent that's come out of West Orange, even if they didn't go to West Orange High School. But at some point, it was in West Orange. They went to Roosevelt, Liberty, and then they went to a different high school. But it's a lot of talent.
Yeah.
That's West Orange. Man, thank you for hopping on, taking time out of your schedule
on
with us, man. We appreciate you. Y'all know the vibes. If you stay ready, you don't got to get ready. Bench Mob, we out. Peace.